Picture this. You're an owner-operator who bought into the hydrogen dream. You spent close to $300,000 on a brand new Class 8 hydrogen fuel cell truck. State-of-the-art, zero emissions, backed by a company Wall Street once valued at $30 billion. You were one of the first. A pioneer. Now, your rig is sitting in a parking lot. It hasn't moved in months. You're paying storage fees and insurance on a truck that won't run because there's no affordable hydrogen fuel within reach. The company that sold it to you? Bankrupt. Gone. And when you finally track down someone willing to sell you hydrogen, they quote you $35 per kilogram. At that price, you'd go broke hauling freight. That is not a nightmare. That is the real story of William Hall, a fleet operator out of the San Francisco Bay Area, and one of the first Nikola hydrogen truck owners in California. So today, we're getting into the full truth about hydrogen trucks. Not the press releases, not the government promises, the real numbers, the real problems, and the real reason why diesel drivers, experienced, smart, hardworking truckers, are refusing to make the switch. Stay with me, because this story is a lot more complicated than the headlines. Let's start with what hydrogen is actually supposed to offer, because on paper it sounds incredible. A hydrogen fuel cell truck works by combining hydrogen gas with oxygen inside a fuel cell stack. That electrochemical reaction generates electricity, no combustion, no diesel exhaust, nothing coming out of the tailpipe but water vapor. The electricity powers electric motors that drive the wheels. Now here's what makes hydrogen genuinely exciting for trucking. First, energy density. Hydrogen has roughly 3 times the energy density of diesel by weight. Second, range. Fuel cell trucks can travel 500 miles or more on a full tank, with some newer models claiming up to 700 miles. Third, and this is huge for professional drivers, refueling time. A hydrogen truck refuels in about 15 to 20 minutes. That's comparable to diesel. You're not sitting at a charger for an hour or more like you are with battery electric trucks. For long-haul Class 8 operations, the kind where a driver is running 600 miles a day and can't afford downtime, hydrogen looks like the logical solution. Battery electric trucks struggle with range under heavy loads, battery weight eats into payload capacity, and charging times don't fit real-world freight schedules. Hydrogen avoids all of those problems, and fuel cells are actually more efficient than internal combustion engines. Research from the Clean Air Task Force found that fuel cells are about 20% more efficient than diesel engines, meaning 1 kilogram of hydrogen is equivalent to roughly 1.28 gallons of diesel. Maintenance should be simpler too. Fewer moving parts than a diesel engine, no oil changes, no complex DEF systems. Early adopter fleet operators noted quieter operation, smoother acceleration, and reduced vibration, things drivers actually appreciated behind the wheel. On a global level, the momentum looked real. Companies like IKEA, DHL, Cisco, Maersk, and PepsiCo were all testing hydrogen freight. The global hydrogen truck market was valued at $4.2 billion in 2025 and projected to reach $25.8 billion by 2032, a compound annual growth rate of nearly 30%. In Europe, Hyundai deployed its X-Scient fuel cell trucks in Switzerland, Germany, South Korea, New Zealand, and Israel. Toyota partnered with Kenworth and Peterbilt, 2 of the most respected names in American trucking, to develop Class 8 hydrogen trucks. Volvo announced plans to road test hydrogen-powered internal combustion engines. Daimler was developing its Gen H2 truck. Cummins had been working on hydrogen engines for over 3 years. On paper, the stars were aligning. Then reality showed up. Here's the single biggest reason diesel drivers won't make the switch. You cannot fuel a hydrogen truck if there's nowhere to fuel it. Right now, in the United States, there are fewer than 100 publicly accessible hydrogen refueling stations capable of handling heavy-duty trucks, and the overwhelming majority of those are concentrated in California. Compare that to over 8,000 DC fast chargers for electric vehicles, or the roughly 150,000 diesel stations spread across the country. For a long-haul trucker running from Dallas to Chicago or Atlanta to New York, there is essentially no hydrogen infrastructure along the route. This is what industry insiders call the chicken and egg problem. Nobody wants to build hydrogen stations until there are enough trucks to justify the investment. But nobody buys the trucks until there are enough stations to fuel them. And unlike diesel, building a hydrogen refueling station isn't simple. You're dealing with compressed gas at extreme pressures, cryogenic storage requirements, and specialized safety systems. It requires oil and gas level engineering expertise just to operate the pumps. Nikola's energy division, called Hyla, tried to solve this with modular mobile refueling stations that could be deployed quickly. They planned 14 refueling solutions by the end of 2024. They didn't get there. Plans were made, corridors were mapped, the hydrogen highway from Oakland to San Diego, stations along I-80 and I-95, the Texas Triangle, the Northeast Corridor. The federal government earmarked $8 billion through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act to build 7 clean hydrogen production hubs across the country. There were partnerships and press releases and ribbon cuttings, but on the actual ground, right now, in 2025 and 2026, if you're a trucker in the Midwest, the Southeast, or anywhere outside of coastal California, hydrogen fuel simply does not exist at scale. You cannot run a business on a fuel you can't buy. And when fuel is available, the price is brutal. Let's talk money, because this is where hydrogen's promise really breaks down. Hydrogen fuel today costs between $10 and $16 per kilogram at most public stations in the United States. When Nikola's Hyla network was operating under its early adopter contracts, they were charging about $6 per kilogram. After Nikola's collapse, one California owner was quoted $35 per kilogram by the only supplier he could find. There is no way that will be feasible. Now let's do the math. A Class 8 fuel cell truck uses roughly 8 to 10 kilograms of hydrogen per 100 miles. On a 600-mile day, that's 50 to 60 kilograms of hydrogen. At $10 per kilogram, you're spending $500 to $600 on fuel for a single day's run. Diesel at $4 per gallon, with a truck getting 6 miles per gallon, costs around $400 for the same trip. Hydrogen at current prices is significantly more expensive than diesel, not less. For hydrogen to reach cost parity with diesel, experts say it needs to come down to the range of $4 to $6 per kilogram. A partnership in Germany between Hylane and H2 Mobility reached $8 per kilogram in late 2025. A breakthrough that proved parity is achievable, but that's in Germany, with a more developed infrastructure network. In the US, that kind of pricing is still years away. Then there's the cost of the truck itself. Right now, a hydrogen fuel cell Class 8 truck costs nearly double a comparable diesel unit. We're talking $300,000 or more before incentives, versus roughly $150,000 to $180,000 for a high-spec diesel. Federal and state incentives can take a big bite out of that. California was offering up to $4,000 to $8,000 in incentives per vehicle for small fleets at one point. But incentives are not guaranteed, they can be cut, and owner-operators running on thin margins can't base a 10-year business decision on government subsidy programs. For large fleets with guaranteed incentive access on specific routes, the math can work. For a small owner-operator trying to buy one truck and run their own book of freight, it's a financial gamble. And then there's the total cost of ownership question that analysts keep debating. Some projections suggest hydrogen trucks could have lower lifetime costs than diesel by 2027 or 2030, once fuel prices drop and maintenance savings kick in. But those projections assume that hydrogen infrastructure will develop on schedule, that fuel costs will fall as projected, and that the trucks themselves will be reliable. Recent history suggests none of those assumptions are safe to make. If you want to understand why diesel drivers are skeptical, look no further than Nikola Corporation, the company that was supposed to lead the hydrogen trucking revolution. In 2020, Nikola went public through a SPAC merger and briefly reached a market valuation of $30 billion. The trucks looked incredible. The promises were enormous. Then investigators found out that a promotional video showing a Nikola truck driving down a highway was actually just the truck rolling downhill with no power. The founder, Trevor Milton, was later convicted of fraud, then pardoned in March 2025. Despite the scandals, Nikola actually did get a product to market. They delivered North America's first commercially available hydrogen Class 8 truck, the Nikola Tre FCEV, and sold 235 units total. They opened a hydrogen fueling station in Ontario, California. They supplied over 330 tons of hydrogen through Hyla before operations halted. But in February 2025, Nikola filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy with just $47 million in cash on hand. The company that was once worth $30 billion was valued at $74 million by the time it went under. Lucid Motors won the auction for Nikola's factory, but did not take on the trucks, customers, or technology. The hydrogen trucks were sold off separately for pennies on the dollar. The customers who had trusted Nikola were left holding the bag. Parts became unavailable. Warranty support disappeared. Hydrogen supply dried up. Trucks sat idle. One fleet operator in California described pursuing plans E, F, and G just to figure out how to keep their rigs running. And Nikola wasn't alone. Hyzon Motors, another high-profile hydrogen truck startup, also dissolved in early 2025. Quantron was gone too. Multiple green hydrogen production projects had their federal funding canceled by the Trump administration. Global fuel cell truck sales plummeted in the first half of 2025, according to Bloomberg NEF's most recent report. The same report noted that Daimler is now pushing its liquid hydrogen truck commercial rollout from 2027 all the way to the 2030s. This is what diesel drivers see when they look at hydrogen. They don't see a promising new technology. They see a graveyard of bankrupt companies, stranded assets, broken promises, and early adopters who took a risk and got burned. If you're a driver with a mortgage, a family, and a business to run, that is not a story that makes you want to sign up. Let's be honest about something that rarely gets said in polite company. Diesel is very, very good at its job. After more than 100 years of development, diesel engines are reliable, durable, and efficient in ways that are hard to overstate. A modern Cummins X15 or PACCAR MX engine can run 1,000,000 miles with proper maintenance. A skilled diesel mechanic can be found at almost any truck stop in America. Parts are available everywhere. The fuel is everywhere. The financing options are everywhere. Diesel trucks also dominate in real-world long-haul performance. An experienced driver can cover 600 to 700 miles in a single shift with 2 15-minute fuel stops. No other technology can match that today. Not battery electric, and not hydrogen at current infrastructure levels. Heavy Duty Trucking magazine made this point bluntly in a 2024 review of the zero-emission landscape. There are currently no trucks available that can compete with diesel trucks in long-haul applications on an apples-to-apples operational basis. That's not a diesel advertisement, that's a trade publication that covers the whole industry. And here's a data point that often gets lost in the green trucking conversation. The U.S. Department of Energy found that the vast majority of freight tonnage in America moves less than 250 miles. That actually plays to battery electric trucks, not hydrogen. So even in the segment where hydrogen is supposed to shine, long haul, the economics and logistics don't yet support a wholesale switch. So what does the road ahead actually look like? Here's the honest answer: complicated. Hydrogen isn't dead. The technology itself is real, and the physics are solid. Fuel cells are genuinely more efficient than internal combustion engines. A hydrogen truck's refueling time really is comparable to diesel. The performance really can match what drivers are used to. The companies still standing, Hyundai, Toyota Kenworth, Daimler, Volvo, Scania, are real manufacturers with deep pockets and long-term commitments. In Europe, the infrastructure is more developed. In Germany, Hylane is running Hyundai Xcient trucks profitably at diesel cost parity right now. Scania just launched its first hydrogen fuel cell truck with a 1,000-kilometer range claim. Daimler's Gen H2 is in second phase trials with multiple logistics partners. In the U.S., the picture is more uncertain. The cancellation of federal green hydrogen funding under the Trump administration was a significant blow. The Hydrogen Hub program that was supposed to seed infrastructure across the country is in limbo. California remains the only state with meaningful hydrogen infrastructure for trucks, and even there, the network is thin. For hydrogen to win in American trucking, several things need to happen simultaneously. Fuel costs need to fall to $4 to $6 per kilogram. Infrastructure needs to be built along actual freight corridors, and the trucks need to be delivered by manufacturers with the financial stability to stand behind them for the long haul. The UC Davis Institute for Transportation projects that hydrogen fuel cell trucks could serve approximately 60% of long-haul freight trips by 2045. That's a credible long-term scenario, but 2045 is not today. What's more likely in the near term is a hybrid landscape. Diesel remaining dominant in long haul through the late 2020s and into the 2030s, battery electric growing in regional and short haul applications, and hydrogen earning its place gradually on specific high volume freight corridors where infrastructure investment makes economic sense. Renewable natural gas is also in the conversation. It's 95% of the way to zero emissions, works in existing ICE trucks, and is available through existing infrastructure today. A lot of industry veterans think the regulators are making a mistake by not counting it. So here's the bottom line. Hydrogen trucks are not a scam. The technology is real, and in the right conditions, they work. But diesel drivers are refusing the switch for reasons that are completely rational. The infrastructure isn't there. The fuel is too expensive. The early mover companies are going bankrupt. And diesel, despite everything, is still the most reliable, most available, most cost-effective way to move freight across America today. The green trucking revolution will happen, but it's going to happen on the road, not in a press release. And when it does, it'll be because the economics finally work, the fuel is actually available, and the companies selling the trucks are actually solvent. Until then, the diesel engine isn't going anywhere. And the drivers who know that, they're not being stubborn, they're being smart. If you found value in this video, hit that like button and subscribe. We cover the trucking industry without the hype, just the facts. Drop a comment below. Are you a driver or fleet operator who's looked at hydrogen? What's your take? We read everything. Thanks for watching. Keep the rubber side down. We'll see you in the next one.